Ladies and gentlemen, we invite everybody to come underneath the canopy using social distance. In a moment, we're going to begin the funeral ceremony. For those of you who are here, we do ask everyone to take a moment to be sure that your phones have been turned off. The services for Rita Kissel Meltzer will be officiated by Rabbi Alan Kensky. In a moment, he's going to approach the family to perform the ancient ceremony of Kriya. Just as a reminder, we do have water over here. We can't hand it to you. However, if you want to come forward, it's here for your taking.
I'll get level now, and then we'll lower it after the memorial prayer.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Ron Thursday, Jeff, I want to do the tearing of the garment. I forget who's old. Yes. That's what I thought. Okay. We're going to begin with the ceremony of Kriya, the tearing of the garment, or in this case, a ribbon. We tear a garment or ribbon as a sign of the physical tearing that we feel inside in our hearts. And as we do so, we recite a blessing in which we accept God's decree. So I'll ask you to join me or repeat after me as I recite the blessing. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Dayan HaEmet. Amen. Means, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, the true judge, the judge of truth. I'll tear the ribbon. We'll wear this through the Shiva period, which would end next Sunday morning, except for Shabbat, Friday night to Saturday night. Begin with the 23rd Psalm. Mizmor leDavid Adonai roi lo echsar. Binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yinahaleni. Nafshi yishovev yancheni v'magle tzedek laman shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yinachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai, di shanta v'Hashem en roshi, hosira vaya. Ach tov hachesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. I read from the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. Ribono Shel Olam, Almighty God, Lord of the living and the dead, the hearts of your children who mourn are heavy with grief. Give them comfort. Help them to remember the triumph and the joy in the life of Rita Kissel Meltzer. Help them to treasure what is theirs because Rita lived. Help them to meet grief with courage, to confront the angel of death with life. When despair threatens, when faith falters, sustain us all, O Lord, our refuge and our strength, our ever-present help. And let us say, Amen. It has been my joy and privilege for the past 18 years to be hosted by Andrea and Jeff Meltzer at their annual Breakfast gathering following Yom Kippur. It was at these Breakfast gatherings that I got to meet Rita Meltzer. Invariably, she was seated at the place of honor at the head of the holiday table in the dining room, accompanied by her helper. Almost always I took the seat next to her, and we exchanged greetings for the new year. Through the evening, her granddaughters Gabriela and Tamar and other relatives would come over and visit and greet her. It was clear to me that Rita occupied a special place in the Meltzer home and family, a place of dignity, honor, and love. And as I sat next to Rita, I could sense her inner strength and courage, as well as the dignity with which she carried herself, which were evident even as her physical strength was waning. Today, as we bid farewell to Rita, a beloved mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt, relative, and friend, we remember her for her strength of character, for her determination, for the many contributions she made to our community, and above all, for the love which she showed to her family. Rita was born in Chicago to Ben and Doris Kissel. She was the older of two sisters. Her younger sister, Marlene, passed away last year. Rita was brought up on the near north side, near Lakeshore Drive. She attended Nettlehurst School and Senn High School and pursued college studies first at the University of Michigan and then at Northwestern. While in college, she met David, and they were married in 1952. Rita and David settled into a suburban lifestyle in Glencoe, and soon Robert and Jeff were born. But the family's life was to be upended by divorce, and Rita and the boys moved back to the city, a more favorable environment at the time for a single mother with 2 children. She moved to the familiar surroundings of the Gold Coast and created a home for Robert and Jeff at 1240 Lakeshore Drive. Rita faced the new challenges of her life with strength and courage. She established a beautiful home, collecting works of art. She was a superb mother to Robert and Jeff, a wonderful cook, a den mother, totally committed to their well-being and success. Jeff shared with me a memory of the time when a snowstorm fell on his birthday and his friend's parents would not drive their children to his party. So Rita took her car out and picked up all of the children so that they could be at Jeff's birthday party. It is this devotion of a mother to her children that we remember today. Rita was always an attentive, dedicated mother. Rita excelled in many areas. She was a great investor and excelled at money management. She was known for her philanthropy. She established a foundation at the University of Chicago for pancreatic cancer research in memory of her father. She volunteered visiting elders through CJE. She served on the boards of the Jewish Children's Bureau and of Henry Horner. Rita contributed widely to many causes and was particularly devoted to Federation, both in Chicago and in Florida, where she had a second home. She preferred to give anonymously, going so far as to tell JUF that if they were to list her name in the Book of Life, which records the annual gifts to the Federation, that she would never contribute again. Those of you who know Maimonides' levels of tzedakah know that matan b'seter, giving anonymously, is among the highest levels of tzedakah. Rita supported organizations that were important to her friends. Loyalty was important to her. Rita loved the arts and collected art, including glass. She was a patron of the arts. She attended art shows and cultivated relationships with artists throughout the country. She valued culture and the arts and frequented the ballet, symphony orchestra, and classical concerts. Beauty was important to Rita. She dressed with class. She always wore lipstick, and her clothes were always well coordinated. Rita enjoyed life. She played golf. She had a wide circle of friends. She enjoyed her home in Boynton Beach, where she spent many a winter, and she made many friends at the golf course. Rita was a rock in her support of her family. She was a devoted daughter and took wonderful care of her mother in her mother's old age. She was a devoted grandmother to John, Nick and Britt and Gregory, and to Gabriella and Gregory and Tamar. She was most generous with each of them, and she developed unique and special relationships with each of her grandchildren. She was a presence in their lives, a presence at family events. She was a loving aunt to her nieces and nephews, and she took special joy and pride in her great-granddaughters, Violet and Amelia. At this time, the family expresses its deep gratitude to Barbara, who was such a wonderful companion and caregiver, and to Prosy for her important role in providing Rita with the loving care that she deserved through the years of her decline. Rita is mourned today by Jeff and Andrea, Robert and Marcy, by John, Nicholas and Britt, and Gregory, and by Gabriella and Gregory, and Tamar. I know you will miss her profoundly this season as we welcome in a new year. I, for one, will think of her at Breakfast time, which will be, I'm afraid, unlike that of previous years. But as you mourn your beloved Rita, know that her legacy will continue in your family. She has shown you the way in so many important aspects of life. She has taught you how to live with courage, even in the face of challenge and adversity, how to nurture and show love to family, how to give to others and derive strength from living in community, how to affirm life. All these teachings that Rita modeled will inspire and will live on in you. May the soul of Rita Kissel Meltzer, Rivka bat Binyamin Udevora, be bound in the bond of everlasting life. Tehei nishmatat tzrura, b'tzror hachayim. And let us say, Amen. I now call on Rita's son, Jeffrey Meltzer.
Thank you all for being here. The last few days have given me an opportunity to reflect on my mom in new ways. I've had the chance to talk with some of her lifelong friends, as well as my family, looked through countless photo albums, which we really enjoyed. Talked with her about Rabbi Kensky, looked anew at her art, and gained new perspective on her. The last 13 years of her life have been hard and consuming, and had taken my focus off who my mom had been throughout her life prior to her fight with Parkinson's. The last week has been healthy, surrounded and supported by my daughters, son-in-law, and wife. Rita Kissel Meltzer was simply a remarkable woman. She was brilliant, beautiful, cultured. What she learned early on was that she also needed to be resilient, determined, and independent. My mom was never a victim, but she was victimized throughout her life. Yet she came through each trial stronger than she had gone in. It's hard to even think about all the hardships and barriers that she had to overcome throughout her life. I don't want to air them here, but they were personal and real. From the time I was a little boy, I knew that she needed protection. And when her father passed away as I turned 10, and his funeral was on my 10th birthday, I became that for her. My mom and I were always each other's protectors. We became and remained each other's rock. And while there was much unsaid between them, my Andrea has been there for the last 40 years, always caring for my mom in ways I never could. Andrea made sure that my mom was always included with our family and her family for every holiday, made her birthday parties, sorted her mail, and every mundane way she could think to make my mom's life better. These are the things my mom loved, not in order. She loved golf, and she loved the friends that she golfed with. She loved her friends and relatives and kept up with them over decades. We've gotten a chance to speak with so many of her friends in the last couple of days, and I cannot tell you how meaningful that's been. She loved good food and was very adventurous. When Mom was in town, we went out almost every week with her. She was a great cook and baker too. She loved to travel, she loved music, and went to the symphony, the opera, the ballet, and concerts for as long as I can remember. She loved investing and read the Wall Street Journal daily. She loved fashion. And just yesterday, we went to the apartment as a family and spent a few hours there. And just going through her closet was a reminder of how incredibly, impeccably well-dressed she was. And I want to point out here that Barbara and Procy especially made sure that she maintained that in her illness. She especially loved art, though, and was in the vanguard as a collector of glass art, befriending and patronizing some of the top artists in the country, mostly before they were well known. Her greatest love, though, was being a grandmother. While she was not as hands-on as some, she came to every event and quelled inside from each accomplishment, and there have been many. She worried over each setback, and there have been plenty of those too. She has been there as a role model, and when needed, a refuge. I wish that she had been more verbal and emotive about her love with all of us, but that was simply not her. My mom also grew to love Barbara and Procy, her incredible caregivers who are here today. My mom would not have lived this long or this well without Barbara. She actually knows my mom better than I do now. She knows every one of my mom's friends and relatives and has maintained her social life. When Mom made calls to you in the last few years, it was because Barbara initiated it. She has become my mom's best friend, and I could not possibly have managed my mom's care and life without her. I am so grateful. And Procy, too, has become family. She calls my mom Grandma, and that pretty much sums it up. My mom and I shared so much together. Over the last decade or so, we looked forward to going to SOFA together every year, which is the big sculpture and functional art show in Chicago, and meeting with her artist friends. Knowing the artists who made her favorite sculptures, Martin Blank, John Littleton, and Kate Vogel, and John Kuhn, which we'll have in our home, is so meaningful to me. Meeting the artists at the craft exposition every year who made the earrings that she's given to my girls, and which they're wearing now, made those gifts so much more personal. We loved to go to restaurants together, and she really appreciated that Andrea and I love the ethnic cuisines that most of her friends don't. We went out together almost every week when she was in Chicago. I made sure that she saw the good movies that she would like without violence, which limited that list. One of our favorite trips as a family was the time we went with Mom to Disney World, a trip that she also took my nephews on. My mom has been integral in so many ways for me individually and for my family as a whole. It's hard to imagine a world without Grandma Rita in it. She suffered for a long time, and while I made her promise to dance with me at Gabriella and Gregory's wedding, I didn't expect her to stay with us almost 3 years beyond. A couple of months ago, I told my mom that I knew she had stayed for me and that she had my permission to go, that she had suffered long enough. Our current COVID world has taken away all of our outings, and there are no babies or weddings on the horizon. When she let go, it came too fast for my head to wrap around it. Sunday to Tuesday, and she was gone. Even before Gabriella could get here, 3 hours after I left her, peacefully and pain-free, with Barbara and Procy at her bedside. I said I was ready, but I wish I had more time with her. I still want to be her son. I know that she'll always be here for me, looking out for me and being my rock.
I'll call on Rita's granddaughter, Gabriella Meltzer.
Thank you all for being here. Anyone who knew my grandma well knows that she was an avid art collector. I always remember going to her apartment on Lakeshore Drive and her apartment in Hunter's Run and walking around her immaculate space, observing something new and beautiful each time I went. I was always drawn to pieces in her favorite medium, glass. When the blinds were raised, the sunlight would shine through and cause the glass pieces to glisten. I believe this image perfectly encapsulates my relationship with you, Grandma. A love that was not often spoken aloud, but through your actions always shown proudly for all to see. Grandma, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the deep love you have always shown me, and to express my gratitude for the profound influence you have had on my life and identity, and for the special relationship we shared. The first thing I would like to thank you for is for being such a fixture and presence throughout mine and Tamar's lives, and for always being there. You never missed a single moment, large or small, whether it was a birthday party, graduation, holiday, recital, my wedding, my dissertation proposal defense on Zoom, or a routine Sunday dinner or phone call just to say, "Hello, Gabriella," or "Hello, my dear." You always took the time and effort to be present for me and Tamar, even when obstacles stood in your way. You did not miss a beat, and always encouraged and supported me in my academic and professional pursuits as one of my number one cheerleaders. The second thing I would like to thank you for is showing me how to appreciate beauty and composition, both in fine art and in surrounding yourself with things that add artistry to everyday life. Some of my favorite memories of growing up were the days we spent together, just the two of us, going out to lunch at a nice restaurant, followed by hours on end at the Art Institute. We would walk through the entire museum, spending the majority of our time in the Impressionist wing, where you introduced me to all the artists and their techniques, which I carry with me in my own passion for creating and learning about art. I loved going to the sofa show every year with you and Daddy, and I admired how the artists recognized you and appreciated your feedback on their work. You also showed me how to find beauty in trying new foods at restaurants all over the city, dressing in color-coordinated clothing and accessories, or wearing jewelry from craft fairs. You taught me how a person can approach the world as their most beautiful self. The third thing I would like to thank you for is modeling the value of generosity. According to Maimonides' 8 levels of charity, one of the highest forms of charity is to donate anonymously. You always were incredibly generous. However, you always insisted that any charitable gift not be published with your name. I only learned in the past few years that you had taken in your dear friend from New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and that you also funded several Native American schools. Your quiet but extraordinary generosity set the bar of how I hope to live my life Jewishly, and the values that Gregory and I hope to pass along to our children, God willing, as we continue your legacy into adulthood. The final thing I would like to thank you for today is setting an example of resilience. As Parkinson slowly stole away your trademark independence, you fought to maintain the elements of your life that were most important to you. Being there for your grandchildren, surrounding yourself with all the art and beauty the world had to offer, and continuing your generosity that knew no bounds. I would be remiss not to thank the 2 most important people who helped you foster this continuity, despite nearly insurmountable odds. Barbara, over the past 12 years, as Grandma's closest friend and confidant, you allowed her to express herself and present herself to the world and to me as she would want to be perceived. You are an integral part of our family. Secondly, Daddy, you've taught me through example what it means to honor a parent. The unconditional love, attentiveness, gentleness, and selflessness you have shown Grandma as she battled her illness are the same qualities that make you an unbelievable parent. Grandma, getting used to this new reality of life without you will certainly not be easy, because I cannot imagine a life without you. I will miss the way you started your meal with a glass of white wine with 2 ice cubes and ended it with black coffee. The way you always showed up early at our house for holidays. The way you applied your red lipstick on your bottom lip first, and your soft cheek whenever I kissed you hello or goodbye. Well, I did not make it home in time to kiss your cheek goodbye one last time. I wanted to thank you and say I love you, and I take comfort in knowing how much you loved me too.
Now call on Rita's granddaughter, Tamar Meltzer.
Rita Meltzer. Everyone who met her knew she was the picture of elegance and class, or as my cousin Robbie said to me this morning, fierce and fabulous up until the very end. And yet, despite her deep appreciation for niceties and etiquette, she loved me deeply. Me, the one who flouted the rules and was literally known as the wild child. You see, Grandma and I had a very special bond. I believe that part of this stemmed from the fact that she saw herself reflected within me. Grandma was more of a rule breaker than some might think. Rita Meltzer was ahead of her time. She was born into a time and a home where social norms were strictly observed and where nice young women followed all the rules. It was the 1950s when women were groomed to be wives and mothers and put their own aspirations on the back burner. My grandma tried all that. She was a vivacious and brilliant young woman with a zest for life and exploration. She attended the University of Michigan for her freshman year of college. I'm a proud 3rd-generation Wolverine, go blue. And Northwestern for the 2 years following. One of my favorite stories from Grandma, which shocked me when she first told me, was how she fondly remembered gaining over 30 pounds during her first semester in Ann Arbor, purely from what she described as the best sweet rolls in the world from a bakery off campus. She came home and was chastised by her mother and forced to diet, but I always found this story shocking coming from the Rita I knew, and immensely entertaining. In retrospect, though, it doesn't surprise me that much. Grandma was what my mother and I often like to refer to as a good life junkie, someone who lives life to the fullest and isn't afraid to indulge in the best luxuries that life has to offer. Though she never completed her degree at Northwestern so that she could marry, Rita came into a marriage with that same enthusiasm for life she had always possessed. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to plan, and her signature vivacity was slowly and suddenly stolen from her. Through a series of unfortunate events, my grandma left that marriage a changed woman, more muted and subdued, and faced a whole new set of challenges. Grandma re-emerged into society, obsessed with formality and protocol. As a single mother, a young woman forced to reconcile with herself and forge her own identity. Grandma was divorced in the 70s, when this was as taboo as ever, and was often judged for having the courage to live life in her own way. Grandma lived by her own rules. When there were rules that were unfair, she found ways to circumvent them, leading her back to the suburbs for golf when the clubs downtown wouldn't admit divorcee women. Grandma let nothing stop her. She forged her own path forward in uncharted territory, maintaining her mind-bogglingly massive circle of friends, curating her love for art, golfing, and more. She established an incredible life for herself as a wildly independent and headstrong woman who carefully chose the rules of her life. And Grandma definitely had rules. Rules of how to present oneself and behave and compose oneself in the face of adversity. As I've been reflecting on her life, what strikes me is the kavanah with which she lived, which literally translates in Hebrew to intention. Grandma lived her life with such intention. Everything she did was thought out. Obviously, the way she dressed with matching shoes, purse, lipstick, sweater sets, and even nail polish, or the way she carefully chose a piece of art to double practically as a lamp or a table, or the way she brilliantly analyzed stocks in her spare time, or the way she color-coded her closet or putted on the golf course. And with all of this kavanah and all she did, Grandma represented a new class of women who live for themselves first, a most admirable trait. Like I said, she was a rule breaker in a time when a woman living to please and care for herself was a scandalous notion. Despite the toll that her 20s and 30s took on her in terms of mental health and societal barriers, that vivacious young woman remained alive, though often muted, which is why at some points, admittedly during my childhood, I found myself surprised at how much she really loved me. But as I got older and continued to grow a stronger bond with her, I learned gradually that I reminded her of herself as she once was, the passionate and vivacious young woman with a zest for life that was oftentimes buried under a myriad of societal expectations. But I am quite certain that her soul, finally released from pressure, will thrive once more, unbound by worldly restrictions, and absolutely free to be her wild self. Grandma personally gave me so much. She gave me the gift of education. She taught me the value of anonymous tzedakah, shared with me art, which admittedly took a longer time to appreciate, and of course, gave me my amazing father, the most devoted and loving man who has represented the finest example for me of how to treat one's parents. It wasn't always easy with Grandma. She was a complicated woman after all, but it was worth it. And I will always carry her with me, attempting to embody her elegance and class, and living my life intentionally, whether in small choices, such as wearing one of her signature rings to match earrings she bought me years ago, or in big choices, living as a person she would be proud to call her granddaughter. Zichrona livracha, may Grandma Rita's memory be a blessing.
I'll call on Rita's son, Robert Meltzer.
My mom was a great mom and a good person. I'm not saying she was perfect. She wasn't. Like all of us, she had plenty of flaws and made plenty of mistakes. But as a mother and as a person, she really tried to do her best all the time. It's something we can all learn from. I can really never think of a time that whether I agreed with her or didn't agree with her, that I thought she was doing something to be mean or spiteful or out of malice. She really, really always tried to do the right thing for everybody. She was kind. In her own very quiet way, she went out of her way to help people. Over the last few days, I've spoken to a number of her friends and family, and one of the things that jumped out at me that I hadn't even known about was people telling me that when they were in the worst positions of their lives and they really needed somebody, that she probably was there for them more than anybody else and never asked anything from it and never wanted acknowledgement. And she was a fighter. She wasn't really that much older than me when she was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Despite living with a lot of pain and having a very limited quality of life, she never complained about her plight or bad luck or said she was in pain or she didn't feel well. Whenever you'd ask her how she was, she always said she was fine. And I think because of that, I really, really thought she was going to live to be 100. It just seemed inconceivable to me that she was going to die, particularly because there were so many times that we'd be out with her, and I was positive she wasn't going to make it another week. And then, thanks to Jeff and Barbara and Prosy, she'd bounce back. And 3 weeks later, it'd be like nothing ever happened, and she was okay. So, she was supposed to come to our house twice in August, and she didn't make it either time, and that probably should have told me something, because one thing about my mom is she never missed a party or an event. If you invited her somewhere and she could possibly go, she went. She made the best of her life and enjoyed whatever quality of life she had. And I'll think of her always as kind of the last time she was at our house, which was the end of July. During the pandemic, my wife Marcy bought a bird feeder, and my mom just enjoyed sitting in the backyard for a few hours at a time watching the birds, because they were constantly coming and going. And particularly the last 6 months or a year, she wasn't all that verbal, but we could tell how much she enjoyed doing that, and we really had hoped to get her out again to do it some more. We can all learn a lot from the way my mom lived. I didn't always agree with her decisions, but I came to realize that she never made a choice based on her own self-interest or out of malice toward anyone. She always tried to do what she thought was best for everyone all the time. And that's really about all you can ask from anyone in the way they live their life. I've learned a lot from her, and I'm really, really going to miss her.
I'll call Tamara up again to read a piece that Rita's grandson, Nick, wrote from Las Vegas.
I have the honor of reading on behalf of Nick. Thank you to everyone who has joined in person and virtually. Rita Meltzer is my grandmother, and knowing her has been one of the greatest joys of my life. Some of mine and my brother's earliest memories are with her on adventures. Rita has impacted and helped shape me into the man, husband, and father that I am today. Rita was not a typical grandmother. I remember always feeling a sense of deep respect and reverence for her, even at a young age. She had an incredible sense of style, a unique sense of humor, extreme intelligence, commitment to her community, dignity, and grace. Perhaps above all, she had a quiet strength that she carried with her always. Rita's sense of style eclipses clothes. It was the culture she personified. Although my wife and I would often compliment her Cadillac red matching pantsuit and earrings, to which Grandma would reply, "Thank you, I have had this outfit since 1973. So I guess you can add thrifty to her list of qualities as well. Her eye for art, architecture, love for the performing arts, and an adventurous palate helped expose my cousins, brothers, and myself to more than most people are in a lifetime. When you are a kid, going to see the Chicago Symphony Orchestra or an opera with your grandmother doesn't seem so fun, but now I would give so much to sit and enjoy one more show or to go to one museum with you. Rita had a deep love for her friends and the people that she lived amongst. This was apparent when she would sort through her mail. She had countless letters and invitations from friends and an equal amount of mail from different charities that she was involved in. One charity that we both cared deeply for was Lincoln Park Zoo. Spending every year at the zoo night was so special, and spending time at that zoo with one of my daughters, Violet and Grandma, together will always live in my heart. This is not an easy time to say goodbye to someone so special, so I want to take the time to name some of the special places that Grandma Rita took her grandkids. She took each one of us on an individual trip to Disney World when we were 4 years old. Countless golfing outings, swimming, and bingo at Bryn Mawr. Somehow we always went home with some extra prizes from Grandma. And finally, some unique restaurants like Le Bouchon, RJ Grunt's, Dee's, Tarantino's, and countless other places where we talked about life, golf, her travels, politics, and aspirations. My grandmother was a pillar of strength and an example of perseverance. Everyone here knows what she endured to be in our lives longer and create more cherished memories. When you become a parent, you have constant realizations about how much love and support your family members poured into you, and you gain a deeper respect and admiration for them. You also recognize that life is a series of firsts and last times for everything. So in those special moments, tell the people that you love how you feel. Grandma Rita, I love you. Thank you for having such a profound impact on me. Thank you, Nick Meltzer.
Continue with the memorial prayer. Please rise, those who are seated here. Thank you. El male rachamim, shochen b'amromi, hamtzei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. לנשמת רבקה, בת בנימין ודבורה, שהלכה לעולמה, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. ענה בעל הרחמים, הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the soul of Rita Kissel Meltzer, Rivka Bat Binyaminu Devora, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the gentlemen from the cemetery are now going to lower her casket and place the cover of the vault in the grave. For those of you who wish to participate in the burial, we're going to pass out gloves, so please take them. The tradition is to place 3 measures of earth into the grave without handing the shovel from person to person. Please note on the service folder there's information about Shiva, the Zoom Shiva, and in person. Also, memorial contributions in her memory to the ARC Jewish United Fund, or Mount Chitim of Greater Chicago. For those of you online, you can find all that information on our website.
David will give me 2 over here. Okay. There's a custom of placing some earth in the land of Israel, and I want to give you that honor. Sure, I'll just wait a minute till I'm gonna put some. We begin by placing some earth from the land of Israel, from the holy city of Jerusalem, from the Mount of Olives over the Aron, as a sign of the eternal connection between each and every Jew and the landed people of Israel. And I'd like to honor Tamar with the placing of the earth. Just dump it all over the grave. You dump it out over we could try, but I'd like social distance. With social distancing. I think it's going to be next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a final note. At the end of the service, when all the prayers are done, we're going to form a shurot, a double aisle, keeping in mind social distance. So we'll just go from here to the road and just try to keep an arm length distance from each other. And her 2 sons will walk through, and it's at that time you may offer words of consolation. The traditional words you'll find on the back of the service folder.
David, Gabriella's gloves first also.
We invite those who wish to place some earth on the Aron to do so. We'll begin with the members of the immediate family.
Done with the shovel or the glove, you can just place it by that blue pylon and we'll see everything else.
We will begin the traditional burial prayers in a moment or two. begin the traditional prayers that are recited at this time. Al Mekomat Tavo V'Shalom. Hatzur Tamim Palo Kichol Rachav Mishpat. El Emunah V'Einav Tzadik V'Yashar Hu. Hatzur Tamim B'Chol Poal Miomar Lo Matifal. Hashalit B'Mata Uvemal Memitu Mechaye Morit She'ol V'Ya'al. Hatzur Tamim B'Chol Ma'aseh Miomar Lo Mata Aseh. Ha'omer Ve'oseh Chesed Chinam Lanu Ta'aseh. Uvischut Haneh Kad Keseh Hakshiva Va'aseh. Tzadik B'Chol Derachav Hatzur Tamim. Erech Apayim U'Malei Rachamim. Chamolna V'Chusna Alavot Uvanim. Ki Lecha Adon Haslichot V'Harachamim. Tzadik Ata Adonai Lahamit V'Lahachayot. Asher Biyadcha Pikdon Kol Ruchot. Chalila Lecha Zichronenu Limchot. V'yuna Einecha Barachamim Aleinu Fikuchot. Ki Lecha Adon Harachamim V'Haslichot. Adamim ben Shana Yihye O Elef Shanim Yichye Ma Yitron Lo Kelo Haya Yihye Baruch Dayan Haemet Memitu Mechaye. Baruch Hu Ki Emet Dino U'Mishotet Hakol Be'ino U'Mishalem La'Adam Cheshbono V'Dino V'Hakol Lishvo Hodaya Yitenu. Yadanu Adonai Ki Tzedek Mishpatecha Titzdak B'Dovrecha V'Tiske B'Shovtecha Ve'en laharher achar midat shoftecha, tzadik ata Adonai v'yashar mishpatecha. Dayan emet, shofet tzedek ve'emet, baruch dayan ha'emet, shekol mishpatav tzedek ve'emet. Nefesh kol chai biyadecha, tzedek mal'a yeminecha, rachem al pleitat son yadecha, v'tomar lamalach heref yadecha. Gedol ha'etza v'rav ha'aliliyah. Asher einecha pekuchot al kol darchei v'nei adam. Lateit leish kibracha v'chifri ma'alalav. Lahagid ki ashar Adonai, suri v'lo avlata bo. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach. Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. V'hu rachum yichaper avon v'lo yashchit. V'hir bala hashiv apo. V'lo ya'ir kol chamato. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God who gave it. May the soul of Rita Kissel Meltzer, Rivka bat Benyaminu Devora, be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, O Lord, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. O merciful God, our refuge and Redeemer. And let us say, Amen. We'll now call on the mourners to join in the mourners' Kaddish. The text is in your folders, and please join with me. Brother. Yit gadal, yit kadash, shemei rabbah. V'alamad yivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. V'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'alam yolmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei. V'yit hadar, v'yit ale, v'yit halal, shemei d'kudsha barichu. Ve'ela min kol virchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'alama v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to form the Shura as a gentleman from the cemetery going to bring the tractor. I don't think you can just watch it from over there. But if we could have the Shura, just follow me, other than her two sons, and just use social distancing. Please follow me.